Hey everyone, Chris here from IELTS Advantage with a very special video today. Normally we do live lessons here in the studio, but what I decided to do was involve our team in a video all about speaking. So one of the big complaints that we hear about the IELTS speaking test is that the questions are just too difficult, that even a native English speaker wouldn't be able to answer these questions and that they require specialist knowledge. So what we decided to do was I took this book, Cambridge IELTS 13, and there are lots of real IELTS sample speaking questions in here. And I didn't tell my team what I was going to do, but we basically just got a camera, stuck it in their face and asked them these questions. And what I'm going to do is show you what they said as native English speakers and as people who work for an IELTS company, so that you can see if they are up to the standard and whether they would get a band 7 or above. And then what I'm going to do is critique each of their answers and give them some feedback on their answers so that you guys can get inside the head of an examiner, think about what the examiner will be thinking about on exam day so that you can improve too. So let's see if the native English speakers were able to get a 7 or above in the IELTS speaking test. Let's have a look at their answers. Okay, Sophia. So this question is about work-life balance.
Yeah.
Could you recommend some effective strategies for governments and employers to ensure people have good work-life balance?
For governments?
And employers?
Yes, so employers should start again.
No, you can't. You can't start again.
Yeah, you can.
It's supposed to be like the test. All right. So we'll include that one.
Yeah.
And we'll ask you a new one. Okay. Same topic. What is the impact on society if people have a poor work-life balance?
Okay, so if people have a poor work-life balance, it means that they are not taking the time to enjoy their life. They either work too hard or they play too hard. It would be good to have a balance in between your work and your free time to ensure that you're productive. People that work too much tend to be under a lot of stress, so they don't enjoy their life as much. If you're playing too much, you're not making enough money, you're not enjoying your work life. It's also good to have a good work ethic. Yeah.
Thank you very much. This question is about choosing work or choosing a job. Is money always the most important thing when choosing a job?
I suppose it depends who you ask. There will be different viewpoints on that. To some people, money is the be-all and end-all. But for me, over the years, I've learned that you need to get the balance right. So ideally, everybody would love a well-paid job, a job they love doing. But I would say that's a dream situation. Usually, you aren't going to find that in the real world. So for me, I would say you've got to enjoy the job that you do. It's got to give you a reason to get up in the morning, to feel valued, to feel wanted, and if it pays enough for you to cover your bills, then that's a win-win.
Excellent, well done. The topic is about choosing work, choosing a job. Who is best at advising young people about choosing a job, teachers or parents?
I think it depends on what your parents do for a living and their background, but I would probably say your teachers, because they know what your academic strengths are and where your interests lie in terms of that field and what you should do in terms of going to university and where your strengths lie like that. So I think it's probably going to be a teacher over a parent, whereas a parent can kind of push their children in the wrong direction, kind of what they want for them, as what a teacher is a separate entity from them, so they would rather see what child do what they want as opposed to what the teacher wants them to do. topic is social media websites. Why do some individuals post highly negative comments about other people on social media?
Well, there's a politically correct way of answering this and a not politically correct way. Could be that they are feeling bad about themselves and they want to take it out on somebody else. So I would say that if you're spending the time criticizing somebody online, you've actually taken the time to sit down, take time out of your day and type out a negative response, then I think that's because you are lacking in some way in your own life and you're jealous of that person in some way. Because if you are indifferent to somebody, then you're indifferent, you don't care about them. But if you hate somebody enough to write a comment, then that means that you do have a strong, very, very strong feeling inside about them. So, for example, we will get, in our industry, we will get people who are teachers writing very, very negative comments about our stuff. And when you go and look at their profile, there's nothing on there. We never get people who are very, very successful at what they're doing writing negative comments. We normally get people who are either at the start of their career, don't really understand what they're talking about, or they are a competitor, but they, instead of putting in the effort to create original content and actually help students, they're spending their time criticizing other people. So that's what I would say. They're lacking in some area and they're jealous. They're haters, if you want.
So Ruth, we're going to talk about technology and society.
Sure.
Do you agree that there are still many more technological innovations to be made?
That's a really great question. I think that there definitely are a lot more technical innovations to be made, especially with the rise of the likes of Elon Musk and individuals these days that are spending a lot of time and investing a lot of money into ensuring that technology is, you know, it's the future. So yeah, I definitely agree with that.
Good.
Okay, so I hope that you enjoyed those, and I hope that you can see that these questions are quite difficult for native English speakers, even though they have full command of English, and English is obviously not a problem with them, but it really hits home the point that the IELTS speaking test is not just testing your ability to use grammar and vocabulary, pronunciation, fluency. You actually have to answer the questions. You don't need specialist knowledge. It's not a knowledge test, it's not an IQ test, but you do need to answer the questions in a certain way. So what I'm going to do now is to give feedback to each of our team members. So if they were doing the test, what would I say to them? So for Sophia, who did the very first video, her first question was one of those questions in they were all part 3 questions, but sometimes you'll get a question in part 3 and you just will have no idea, alright? So what Sophia did was like, oh, can we stop? I don't know that question. You shouldn't do that, alright? So there's a few reasons why you shouldn't do that. In part 3, they're going to be asking you increasingly more difficult questions to see how you cope with that and to really stretch your language ability. If you're getting really, really difficult questions in part 3, you should be happy about that, because what they're doing is they are telling you that I think that you are really, really good at speaking, and I'm going to ask you a really difficult question to test you out. So that might mean the difference between getting a high score and getting a low score if you just give up or don't attempt to answer the question. Now, you might get a question that you know nothing about, but just attempt to do as best you can and don't get flustered. So Sophia, like a lot of people in our team, they're not used to being on camera, so that might have been part of it. Not everyone is used to a camera being stuck in their face, but Sophia would obviously need to give a much longer answer than that. Not only because that will, a very short answer for part 3 will result in a lower score for coherence, for fluency and coherence, but you're not giving the examiner anything to judge you on your vocabulary, on your grammar, on your pronunciation, because there's just not enough data being thrown at the examiner. They can't judge you on I don't know, or let's start again, or can you ask me a different question. You have to give a full answer so that they can really judge your grammar and your vocabulary and your pronunciation. So Sophia's second attempt was much better. I definitely give her a very high score, obviously, for vocabulary, grammar and pronunciation. That's no surprise. Even though Sophia is not technically a or a native English speaker. She was born in Portugal and grew up in Portugal, so English is actually her second language. So considering that she is not a native English speaker, pronunciation, vocabulary, grammar was at a very high standard for the second one. However, like a lot of people, her fluency was quite good, but her coherence was lacking a little because she didn't actually answer the question. So I think the question was what impact work-life balance has on society, but she didn't really talk about the impact that it has on society. She talked about the topic in general, which is not really the same as answering the question. So again, not related to English skills and your English ability, but if they ask you a question, you have to answer that question and address that question. So she might have slipped up a little bit for that question. However, remember that you're not being judged on your answer to one question. You're going to get a band score for your whole speaking performance. So if there was just one question or two questions in part 3, or maybe one question in part 1, one question in part 3, that you talked about the general topic, but you know all your other answers were dead on, were answering the specific question, you wouldn't get into too much trouble. So I think Sophia would be absolutely fine. So the second person was Mark. Mark's fluency and coherence was excellent. He really developed his answer really well. His grammar was obviously very good, a wide range of grammar structures, and very accurate. Pronunciation, clear, easy to understand. One thing, if I had to criticize Mark, was he was a little bit formal in his delivery. Again, that's I think because you are sticking a camera in somebody's face, but it's kind of the same. We experience this with students ourselves, is they will be very fluent and the pronunciation will be excellent, their intonation will be good, their connected speech will be good, because they're relaxed. And when you're relaxed, people just speak a lot more naturally, their fluency and pronunciation is good. Then when they go into the test, they kind of stiffen up, they get very nervous, and that does affect their pronunciation, the higher level pronunciation features, and their fluency. So I would say to Mark, you know, his vocabulary was also great. Some great idiomatic natural English expressions like win-win, be all and end all. Obviously very high level English. But I'd say just to Mark, relax a little bit and speak to the examiner like a human being. But again, stress does come into play. Justin, who is holding the camera right now, but Justin, pronunciation was excellent, his fluency was really good, his vocabulary was great, his grammar was also very good, obviously. The thing that I would say about Justin is he developed his answer really well, because it was one of those questions that says A or B, like giving a choice, and what they want you to do there is compare the two. So what Justin did was it depends, and he talked about both sides. He talked about parents and teachers, and he developed his answer really well there, as well as answering the question. He picked one. So he said it depends, maybe this, maybe that, I think this. Justin watches every single video I make because he's my social media guy, so maybe he picked up those tips from that. Ruth, again, native English speaker, great grammar, great vocabulary, great pronunciation, however, way too short. So Ruth would actually get quite a low band score for fluency and coherence. So her fluency was really good, no problems there, but she didn't really give the examiner enough to go on. For part 3, you really need to develop your answers. So she said some things like, you know, people like Elon Musk, technology is the future, but she would have to explain those things a little bit more. Why does having Elon Musk in the world lead to more innovation? What does technology is the future mean? How does that mean that we're going to have more technological innovations? Giving examples of things that she thinks will be technological innovations in the future. So giving the examiner a lot more to go on. Also, if every single question was answered in that way, very, very short, then the examiner might not have enough really to judge her grammar and her vocabulary and her pronunciation, because you need to give them a lot more than that. So all in all, it does show that these questions are quite difficult, especially part 3. They will be asking you increasingly more difficult questions. However, that doesn't mean that you can't do very, very, very well in the IELTS speaking test with the correct feedback. So all of these team members of my, if they did the test, they would all get a band 9, because I would be coaching them, telling them what to do, what not to do, giving them feedback on everything, and they would be absolutely fine eventually. However, if they went into the test without any coaching, without any feedback, even as native English speakers, they wouldn't do that well, because it's not only, you know, testing your English, it's testing your ability to do the IELTS speaking test. And there are specific things that they want you to do, and you need to be aware of those. So if native English speakers need help and need feedback, you as an English learner, what do you think you need to do? You need to get feedback, you need to get help with it, and that is really going to help you out. And I'm not saying that you have to join our course or you have to get me to help you out with that, but get someone to help you out with that. Even if that is just doing a mock test at home and asking your friend or your family member to give you some feedback on that, but even better, with your teacher, get them to do a mock test with you. You can get these books in any good bookshop. I'm not affiliated with Cambridge, by the way. Or you can download questions for free, do some mock tests, or even, if I have my phone here, you can set up your phone and record yourself doing it, and then you can watch it back and think about the length of your answers. You can use our website, IELTSadvantage.com, which has a lot of free advice, and you could watch yourself and think about the advice that we give, and did you do the things that we suggest, or even better, get an expert, someone with a lot of experience to do a mock test with you and to help you out. It might cost you a little bit of money, but it's much cheaper than failing the test. Hope that you find that interesting, and thank you very much. Bye-bye.